You may be surprised to know that Washington has volcanoes. You may also be surprised to know that Oregon has volcanoes. In the modern age, we are so incredibly fortunate to witness the Oregon Cascades. It's just that they're a slight problem for the Klamath Blue Mountain Lineament, or KBML. To give you the list of volcanoes that we see today, you probably know this one: Crater Lake, formerly Mount Mazama; Newberry, which is a little bit different; one of my personal favorites in Oregon, the Three Sisters; an absolute pain in my backside, literally, to climb, Mount Jefferson; and the probably pretty well recognized too, Mount Hood. Throughout the state, there's some small ones as well, but those are the main ones. Fun little fact to hit home the smaller volcanic fields: the city of Portland is built right next to the boring lava fields. But save for Newberry, the ones that I mentioned to you are all stratovolcanoes. Sometimes they have a flair for things like Crater Lake, but the volcanic story and the way that they formed and came about is fairly similar to Washington's story. Wanda Fuca Plate is subducting underneath the North American plate, and as it reaches about 60-ish miles down due to heat, pressure, and water, surprisingly, it undergoes melting, and through that melting, the density of that rock rises up through the North American continent, and boom, volcanoes. But it's interesting to note that despite being a part of the same subduction zone, there is variance in the volcanism. Washington volcanoes are generally more volatile. That is, that gases will build up and cause large eruptions. Oregon, on the other hand, leads kind of more into the more runny, fluid style of things. Think like Hawaii. A lot of the state is made up of shield volcanoes, as well as long-running lava flows such as we see here in eastern Oregon. It's interesting to note that the further north away from Oregon that you go, the more you get into those exotic terrains that we've talked about that have kind of beat Washington up over time. And sure, Oregon has its fair share of exotic terrains. We've already mentioned two of them in the Blue Mountains as well as the Klamath Mountains. But notice, a lot of this material over here and kind of in the middle over here is that Eocene sedimentary rock, very similar to what we have here in western Washington. But right here in the middle, Cascade volcanoes. When you've got less harder rock, if you will, to fight through, it's a little easier to get your stuff to the surface. So again, the Cascades are really the antagonist in the story of KBML. Especially in terms of the Olympic Wallowa lineament, or OWL, you can squint in Washington and see it in places like the Yakima Fold Thrust Belts. So what's the deal? Huge spoiler for where we're going. Some of you have probably heard this story from a professor from Central Washington University known as Nick Zentner. Professor Zentner has talked far and above beyond anything I could ever dream of about the clockwise rotation of the Pacific Northwest. Telling a long story short as quick as I can, Western Washington and Oregon are moving in a sort of clockwise fashion in accordance with GPS monitoring station, ironically around the Blue Mountains. So notice again, OWL is sitting here at this place where these arrows that indicate motion are pushing up into the state. And down here along the Oregon Cascades, this is being drugged north. Washington is being scrunched and Oregon is being stretched. Oh, now we're getting somewhere. So consider, if you will, that volcanoes release a lot of material. So when you're having an area that is stretched out and thinned, it's a lot easier for that volcanic material to come over the top and fill it in. So the part through Oregon in which KBML runs through has been buried by the Cascades. Mind you, there is a mechanism behind that, and it involves Newberry, which we're going to talk about in its own video coming up. But speaking of filling things in, didn't something happen 17-ish million years ago that did a lot of filling of things? It's back! Yellowstone, which got its start roughly near the border of Oregon and Nevada 17 million years ago and did a whole lot of filling things in out east. Just real quick, this video was kind of a speed run of Oregon volcanoes, and more so the mechanisms around KBLM and so on and so forth. If there's anything specifically about Oregon volcanoes that you'd like me to touch on, more than glad to do a sort of appendix video. But we meet again, my mortal enemy. In our next video, Oregon versus the Yellowstone hotspot.